Hello everyone, it's Kathie. Thanks so much for joining me. Welcome to part 2 of the November 2019 Paper Pumpkin Kit Alternatives. So we're going to get started right away, and we're going to start off with this holly leaf stamp, and just showing you that I actually have cut it apart just for ease, and you can easily just put it back together. All right, the colors that we're going to be using is Crushed Curry, Granny Apple Green, and Real Red. And using the Stamparatus mat, I think it's about 2 inches where I'm starting. And I'm just starting off with the holly leaves. So I'm just stamping, and then I'm doing a second generation stamp. And then we'll just stamp across the panel with the Snowflake Trio and some holly berries. I'm going to stick a piece of painter's tape across it evenly, and then I do have a piece of cardstock that I'm going to use as my guide, and then the color we're going to use is Shaded Spruce. I'm just going to shade along the side of that cardstock, going across the panel, and just make sure when you do it that you remain straight up and down vertically. You don't want to start slanting. And I kind of started doing that just a little bit, but it'll do. So nothing hard, super easy, just a different way of decorating your card. All right, so I took off the painter's tape, and now I'm going to stamp the Christmas sentiment. I know we're all past that, but you can always use it for next year. And I believe this ribbon is in the kit. I can't quite remember, but I'm pretty sure. So I just cut a little piece, and we're going to stick that across the top of the shading. And then I did slice off about 1/4 inch off the panel beforehand, and then I stuck it down onto, I think it is garden green, but I'm not 100% sure. And I put down a little glue dot underneath the ribbon, and then also to stick down the little bow. And then finally a few sequins that came in the kit. And I stuck it down on a top folding card base. Now, wasn't that easy? Simple and pretty. All right, moving on to card number 2. This one's pretty easy too. So just a bunch of stamping with the holly leaves. And I do stamp off with this one because it's just a little bit too dark, and I didn't want it super duper dark. And we'll stamp some berries around the panel with Real Red. And I am stopping about 1.5 inches from the top there, or bottom. Now I am back to the Pacific Point for some weird reason. Oh, I'm doing the sentiment next. So we're just going to stamp that in the same color. And I'm going to call this silver cord. Yeah, that's what I'm going to call it. So I wrapped that around, I think about 3 times, and just stuck it down on the back. And then I doubled up on this bow also with the silver cord, and tied a bow, a few extra bits of the glue dots to hold it down, and then a bunch to stick it onto the panel. And that's that. So I did cut this panel also down to 1/4 inch around, and then onto a top folding card base. So another super easy one, but notice the space just underneath the cord there. So I decided to brave it and stamped a couple of the single leaves, and then it didn't work out too well. So the Stampin' Right marker came to the rescue to fix that, and then a few sequins to finish it off. All right, so now to the third card. We have Knight of Navy in a panel, which I do not remember what I cut it down to. Let me see. I think I cut it 1/4 inch around. And then those were the elements that I'm using. So I am starting off by stamping the sentiment. And then I'm going to do some shading on the corner and then on the opposite corner. So we'll get this panel ready, and now we're going to move on to the next part. Now, I decided to use the end piece of this holly. I don't know what it was really for, but I saw, you know how the top of the Christmas ornament, I saw that. In hindsight, I should have maybe flipped it the other way. Because after I did that, I decided I'm going to just color it in on the backside. So I didn't really need to use that piece. But if you want a guide, then do use it. But turn it the other way so it's the white that shows, and then just still cover it up or color it with the yellow. And then you can just use it as a guide, and then you have just a little bit of texture or dimension. Because the way I've done it, it's just flat. So yeah, see how it looks perfect? And then afterwards, I decided to cut the inner part of that because I wanted a hole for some reason. Not that it mattered. You'll know what I mean. Okay, so we'll just glue that down after I've stuck down those snowflakes, and they were just the perfect size for the circle. And then we'll just stick down the elements that came in the kit. The holly leaves, the sprigs, and the red rhinestones, which I do not recall if they came in the kit or not. All right, so then we're going to use that silver cord, stuck it down with a glue dot, and then I just dropped it on the panel, and then I just stuck it down on a top folding card base and some red rhinestones to finish it off. And then I also threw in a bow at the top of the ornament. And if I was to call it, I think this was my favorite card out of the bunch. Let me know what you think. All right, so moving on, we're going to use this tag, the red circle, and I cut this tree down in half, and then we're also going to use this piece. And then I didn't have it on screen, but I am going to use a full tree also. So with shaded spruce, we're going to add some color to this piece. And this piece is the left side of the tree that we cut in half. So we're going to shade the bottom part of it. And then with Old Olive, we're going to do the same thing because I want the bottom part deeper. So I just kind of added some more, and then it wasn't quite dark enough. So then later on, I did go in with some gray, basic gray, I believe. And then that worked out just right. Nice and dark. And you'll see what it's going to be for shortly. And next with Balmy Blue, we're going to shade this tag about 3/4 way up. And then with the blender, I'm just adding ink on the edge because I want streaks this time. So in this case, it's okay to create streaks on your project. All right, onto the circle piece. We're going to shade around the edge on the other side of it with the yellow. And you're going to go a little bit heavier around the edges, and then later as you go towards the center, just make sure you leave a little white section so that it gives that illusion that the circle is kind of round. Okay, and then this next piece, we're just going to shade just the bottom part lightly with the Balmy Blue just to give it just a bit of color. And then here is that full tree, and whatever I had on my sponge dauber, I just shaded the outside of the tree, not a lot. And then now back to the tag and that first piece that we colored in. Just going to stick that down, and then you'll see why it had to be nice and dark. So that piece is like distant mountains or trees in the background, and then a big giant sun or moon behind it. So I snip that just so it fits a little bit better. And then we're going to stick down this big tree so it's at the front. So this is a scene on this tag that we're creating. And then onto this piece. I kind of liked it. You know, it's kind of maybe snow, whatever way you want to take it. Snow with a bit of greenery. And then I'm just going to hit it again with the sponge or the blending tool with the same Balmy Blue at the very bottom so it all blends together. And then I'm just going to add a little ribbon. And then later on, I'm going to put a bow also at the top there. All right, so moving on, this is where I decided to use a small sponge dauber and add some yellow streaks for some reflection. And then I'm going to do the same thing, just a little bit darker streaks with Pacific Point. And then I take off the ink, just scrub it off on my paper towel there, and then just lightly blend it so it doesn't look too stark. And then some additional shading all around the tag. Okay, so we're done with that. And then remember this piece from the other card, this leftover piece. So it's 2 inches, the first measurement. I like that. So I'm going to cut it at the 1 inch mark so it's even on each side. And we're going to stick that down on each side evenly. I like it so much that I decided I'm going to still use it because it needed a little something else. So I'm using my T-ruler to make sure it's straight across. And then I stick that down. And then the label, I'm going to add some dimensionals. And the panel, it is real red. Okay, and then here's where I add the additional little bow just below the tails. You could skip it, but I figured I'll just add it in to maybe use up the cotton ribbon. And then a bunch of glue dots to stick down this bow. And, you know, I was running out of tiny sentiments, so I used the one that came in the kit and just cut out the word joy. I think I used that twice, so you'll see that. And so there's the joy. I stamped it in real red and just cut it back. And I did leave just a little bit of white at the top and the bottom. And to finish off the card, I put some sequins on it. And this panel was not cut down at all, and I stuck it onto a top folding card base. So it's kind of a cute little scene on a tag, and I think it turned out pretty good. All right, we're on our final card, and I have the deer stencil piece, I guess. I think it's the negative. And I'm starting off with the sled. So we're going to cut it back and remove all the other parts of it. So we just want that one panel. And then I have the positive deer. I just centered it onto the panel, and then I took the negative part and lined it up. And then I'm just coloring in what I want with the black Stampin' Write marker. So it's really not that hard. I think the hardest part maybe is the shape to kind of finish off the bottom. You know what I mean in just a moment. But see, I just kind of, you know, did a quick little swoop line there just to cut off the deer's head. And voila, it's nice and centered by using that first deer and then putting the stencil piece or the negative piece over top. So we're going to use the panel that came in the kit that kind of is a little bit blue at the top and then fades white to the bottom. And so we're going to use that, and then we're going to put some the silver cord around the bottom of that wood panel piece. So we'll just stick that down, tie and cut off the excess, and then we're also going to raise it with dimensionals. Okay, so not too hard so far, pretty easy, right? All right, and then we're going to stick this on to, I believe it's Pacific Point. So I'm just going to slice off about a 1/4 inch off this panel, and we'll just stick down the deer piece in the center of that Pacific Point panel. And then now we're just going to add in the holly leaves and a couple of snowflakes. So we're going to put a holly element at the bottom of the right, and then we're also going to do one at the top left just to balance it off. And then there's that second sentiment using the joy word because I needed something tiny. And that snowflake, I decided to raise that with a dimensional, if I'm not mistaken. I don't know if I did that then or there, or if I changed my mind that I didn't want the dimensional. Anyway, you decide if you like it or not. And then I added some red rhinestones, and I did add one on his nose. I don't know. I I just felt like it needed one. All right, and then I tied a little bow, and I'm just going to tuck it behind that snowflake just to give it just a bit more detail. And yeah, I think it's just enough, like not too overdone. And then once I'm finished fussing, I'm going to stick it down on a top folding card base. So super easy, right? Just a bit of coloring. All right, so that is actually the last 5 alternate cards for the November 2019 Paper Pumpkin kit. Here are the stills of each of the finished cards. And near the end of this video, I'm going to show you a quick summary of all 10 cards that was created using the kit, and then a final picture of all the cards. All right, guys, I hope you enjoyed it. Thanks so much for joining me. And I should get a work on or move on the current Paper Pumpkin, right? Be safe, everyone. Bye for now.